Hello, I'm Cindy with Wisconsin Voices for Recovery, and this is Speak Out on Stigma. Today we'll be hearing from Tara from Outreach LGBTQ Plus Community Center. Hey Tara, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, I'm good. So tell me, if you told someone about your substance use disorder, how do you think the stigma associated with it would affect the way they treat you?
That's a really good question. It's kind of a strange thing for me because when I talk to people about like my substance use, for example, like back when I was really actively using when I was like 16, I got a lot of reactions where it's like, no, not you. Like you're doing so good in school, you were playing multiple sports, you stay really involved in social stuff. So for me, a lot of the stigma I got was that I didn't come across as like a regular, what people would refer to as like a regular drug user. Which was a really interesting thing for me to experience. And I still get that reaction today where when I'm talking to folks about like my history of like, I've been to rehab, I've like, done all of this other stuff. People are always kind of like that, no, not you. So a lot of the stigma I experience is actually directed at other people and trying to do that differentiation thing where it's like, oh, well, you're one of the good ones, so there's no way that you're like the others. And I really try to push back against that because I think it's wrong to group people. And just because like I look successful, so to speak, in the regular images of success, doesn't mean that my experience was any more or less different than other people that are using substances. Because I believe that like substance use is a pretty morally neutral thing. And it's often the behaviors that we have associated with it, plus the views of society that really like instill that stigma into us.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for mentioning kind of that stigma within the stigma itself. So even within the group of those that are using substances, you've got, well, these folks are worse or better than these folks, and that can add another layer to the problem of stigma.
Yeah.
And how does stigma against people perpetuate substance use disorder?
I think being in kind of like that harm reduction based area that I am, a lot of what I hear from people that are experiencing stigma is it kind of forces people into not only isolation, but secrecy. There's kind of this want for society to ignore folks that are either actively using or just being able to discuss active use. I think what often happens is when people try to talk about it, whether they're like looking for help or support, or just like want to inform people what they're up to just in case something happens. They kind of get shamed into this very like pigeonholed spot of not being able to exist publicly. And I think we end up losing so many more people to overdoses, and other just like awful things that can come with some of the risks associated with substance use. So I think when we're talking about, how does that stigma really impact? It really forces people to hide what they're doing. And it's why I love harm reduction so much because it's focused on being able to tell people like it's fine that you're using because it's your bodily autonomy and your choice in this aspect. But I'd like to like help keep you safe. And so sometimes that's, doing things like sitting on the phone with somebody or just like allowing them to be authentically themselves at all moments. I think that the more that we can kind of open up the discussion on, where does our internalized stigma come from? How bad did dare impact us as kids into like having this idea that we have to be entirely silent about our stuff because substance use is shameful, is a really interesting thing, especially when you look at like that hierarchy of substances. Being somebody who lives in Wisconsin now, the drinking culture here is so bizarre to me in that sense because you can be absolutely blackout drunk by 6 a.m. on game day for the Badgers. And, it's just like it's cool, it's like commonplace. But, if you are doing any kind of other substances, it's looked down upon, you're shamed into a kind of secrecy, whereas some gets to be louder. And I think that the louder some of this stuff is, the more normalized that kind of use is. And it doesn't leave a lot of space for harm reduction to kind of like come in and talk about like, substance use is never 100% safe, just like anything is never 100% safe, just like you're never at a 0% chance of like being attacked by a bear. But I think that the more that we can bring it into the light, the more lives that we're going to be able to impact and save, because people don't have to be so secretive or ashamed or fear losing things like housing, or in Wisconsin, you can lose like your EBT and food stamps, if you don't pass a drug test when you have felony charges. So the more that we can attack stigma within ourselves and as a society, the better chance we have at keeping everybody alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that awareness raising is really key. And I'd like to also touch on, you had talked a little bit about harm reduction and really that's, respecting people where they're at and supporting them where they're at. They're
Mhm.
not needing to be, okay, you have to be at this certain level in order to get support. We can support you where you're at, as a human being in your life as a whole person.
Yes, 100%. I love harm reduction because it focuses on that like aspect of bodily autonomy and personal choice, which is something I'm personally very passionate about. But also like I think it's so key in terms of us all understanding each other better just as human beings, and getting to live like authentic lives, which is another thing I'm very passionate about, like as a queer gender is a big question mark kind of person. Getting to live that authentically and out loud helps me feel safer and healthier within my own body and my habits.
Thank you. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think that people should really look into harm reduction generally, specifically if they ever have the opportunity to read Shira Hassan's book, Saving Our Own Lives. I think it can really help us. The book itself can really help us kind of start unpacking where some of this comes into play and also just give you some avenues for other things. Harm reduction isn't just for substance use, it's also for other things. Like eating disorders, I've had really good experiences using harm reduction in like my eating disorder recovery. Generally, like everyone kind of practices harm reduction on a day to day, whether that's like you wear a seatbelt. For me, it's like I smoke cigarettes so that I don't do a lot of the other substances that I used to do, because I don't have a good relationship for them. And I think it really can help us ground ourselves in understanding our own bodies better, which I think is a benefit for everybody. And I think that Shira Hassan is a brilliant brain, and I'm very, very passionate about things that she says.
Thank you so much, Tara, for sharing your views on stigma. And thank you to our viewers for watching. Speaking on Stigma is a forum to raise awareness about the harmful impact of stigma on those in and seeking recovery. Recovery is for everyone. Together, we can eliminate stigma. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. Thank you and have a good day.